household, silence was required of me in order for me to kind of sustain any degree of peace, but we don't necessarily have to dive into all of that at the moment. That transcended horribly into my work life, into my interpersonal relationships, friendships, even. It led to a lot of self-sabotage in many instances because it's like, okay, well, if I can't say exactly how I'm feeling, I can't communicate, I'm not permitted to, that I must react now in order to portray some sort of whatever's going on within without using words. So that, yeah, it transcended into a plethora of self-sabotage in every area. I mean, yeah, my friendships were very kind of chaotic. My personal relationships, work, it was just like close your mouth, accept what's being force fed to you, and take it. And not only take it, but make it a part of your achievements, if you will. Again, going back to that kind of silliness of just accepting outside validation as
Yeah.
something still totally empty within. I mean, it's just an empty pit. So
Hmm.
that's how that transcends for myself. How
Wow.
about for you?
Oh, similar. The very first thing you said, I went right back to my upbringing because I was told to be seen and not to be heard. So, uh, we had to, all my siblings and myself, we had to stay silent, not because we wanted to, but because we were told to, because we were forced to, and it became the norm. I think we grew up with that feeling that we had to be, and it did transcend into all the areas in my beginning of my career. I did stay silent until that turning point where I realized, no, enough is enough, and you're not going to tell me, because I think I've heard that way too many times, and I just thought that was enough of that. Um, yeah, I mean, I grew up in a household where, oh my gosh, especially on Sundays, we couldn't we couldn't raise our voices. We had to kind of, talk in a hushed tone. There's absolutely no noise. Uh, and for example, if I'm singing, I had to sing very quietly. Nobody could, the kids, the siblings, we couldn't fight. It was, yeah, it's just like that quiet. We had to, because that was rest day. That was the holy day per se. So we had to be very quiet. So it was interesting that you said that the way you grew up.
Yeah. Very
Wow.
similar in the aspect of silence, but a very opposite circumstance, I suppose. Our household was very chaotic. Dad had rageaholism, is what I call it. He was a rageaholic, and so you don't want to you want to tiptoe, you want to walk on eggshells, because if
Yeah.
you don't, you could be the next one that gets
Yeah.
so so yeah, it was more so of like I'm gonna stay silent because it is what is best for me right now. It's just in your circumstance as well, it's just a very different. There were no
Yeah.
holy days in our household.
Yeah.
I wish there were. I
Yeah.
later became a woman of Christ, and a personal endeavor, I found Christ, but our
Mhm.
household was, we didn't have that.
Well, that's good. That's good that, we always hear the cliche. Well, it's not a cliche, it is real. Uh, kids are a product of the environment. And so sometimes you grow up with certain things and you become that, and you can choose. You can make that mindset shift that no, 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 that's not gonna be me.
That
I'm
is
gonna be
true.
who I believe that I'm called to be, which is great. So I commend you for that.
Cycle breakers.
Yeah, exactly. Love it. Wow. What helped you? What really helped you to begin to separate silence as self protection from silence as self abandonment?
So this roots back so many areas of just growth for me. Is, well, obviously, first big thing, physical thing, was moving out of that household, my parents' household, and moving away from, I guess, all of that was kind of a fresh slate in a way. And I don't necessarily mean that we ought to jump around and keep moving every time something hits the fan somewhere. That's not what I mean. I think for me, it was a very dire thing to do and very necessary, but it's not also healthy to just hop from place to place thinking that's going to fix you, because that's not the case. Everything will always be living within you at all times. But it gave me like a space to just like, okay, who figure myself out, who am I, and whatnot. So really what started getting things rolling for me was talking to myself in the mirror, but
Mm.
in a different way than I had. at any other given time when I'm getting ready or doing something. It's more so talking at myself in the past and not necessarily being present. So being present, taking the time to like, okay, assess the human being in the mirror. Who is this person?
Mhm.
Just start with that one simple question in front of the mirror. It is like a snowball of like, okay, and there are rabbit holes that one can go down if we permit the anxious mind to take over. But being self-aware of that anxiety is kind of another level to that. So
Yeah.
it can feel intricate at times, but ultimately that mirror technique, oh my heavens, I mean, I was able to completely reconstruct myself as a human being. And I don't even necessarily mean reconstruct myself. I almost mean deconstruct what
Mhm.
wasn't actually myself. So it's more so an emerging versus a
Yeah.
like chiseling, which was what I was trying to do previously. It was like chisel, this character, but it's like, no, we got to undo all of that. Let that
Yeah.
down.
Wow. I love the way that you explain that about, the self-reflection in the mirror. That's where it starts. And then you can see yourself more clearly. Uh, wow. I like that. So the turning point, you asked me if, a while ago about what was a turning point for me. And that made me think for you, was there a defining moment when you realized you had to stop being loyal to what was breaking you?
Well, different there are many different times and different circumstances which addressed different areas of my life. A specific turning point for personal habits was after my dad passed away in 2022. This is about 3 years ago now. I had habit that I had been invested in for 12 years that was really just not serving me. And it was kind of like that catalyst that permitted me to open my eyes to what I truly desired out of life. And it just wasn't that. So that was kind of one area. In terms of career, it was more so doing those talk therapies in the mirror with myself, like kind of deconstructing. And it wasn't a specific moment that I just realized. It was almost like a series of conversations with myself that I was like, hold on a minute. Like, I mean, yes, would it be cool to be a tax attorney? Yes. However, is that aligned with who I am as a human being?
Mhm.
Perhaps in some ways, if I'm able to kind of force see it that way. But there are other things which my spirit has been called to for many years that I've just shoved into a box deliberately because it's too childish or it's not uh, it's not perceived as something respectful, or it's not necessarily something that you generate a high income from. It was writing for me since I was a kid. I loved to write. I just wanted to write
Mhm.
all kinds of stories, and I'm like, well, authors are broke. I don't want to be that. So, but that's not true. And then that's not true. So that's an illusion. And so yeah, there wasn't a specific moment in time. It was just like a deconstruct. And then I guess in other areas, like my dad passing for like a 12-year long habit that I chose not to broke, and it was almost like day to night, just a decision. How do I
Mhm.
actually want to live my life? Well, I do know that it's not like this. So, how about
Mhm.
for yourself?
There are many. Like you said, there are many turning points for me. One was, it's funny you should mention about your dad, and sorry for your loss. Uh, when my dad passed in 2012, so it's weird how there's some similarities here. Uh, and my mom uh said something that really struck me hard. Uh, so they were married for almost 50 years.
Oh, wow.
I've never heard an argument or anything like that, a fight. And, of course, I know that they must have had some disagreements. In fact, I'm sure they had disagreements. I just never saw it played out in front of the kids. And even if they did, I could never tell. Uh, but when he passed, she said something that almost led me to believe that she kept silent to keep the peace.
Hmm.
And that to me was a huge turning point because that made me like, what? So you were the nice, quiet mom all those years because you felt like you couldn't speak up or you didn't have a voice, right? And so when she passed last year.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
It's
Mine did a year and a half ago as well. That's bizarre.
Yeah, and something shifted. I have to say that something spiritual shifted in me. I can't explain it. I just knew that something happened, something different happened, and as I stood there, because all the kids, all my siblings and myself, we went up and we were all saying something, and it was my turn. But she specifically asked me to sing the song that I sang at my dad's funeral, and as I was about to sing that, and she also asked me to because she had kind of the backdrop. She had a moment she thought that was gonna be it. And it's probably about a year ago before she passed. And so she had me write some things down, like her wishes and things like that. It was very hard for me to get through, but I did it. And she wanted me to leave a special message to one of my sisters in particular. And so as I was reading the message at her funeral homegoing service, and then afterwards I felt something different, but I couldn't explain it. And then when I started singing the song that she wanted me to sing, I looked at her and I started singing the song. I changed some of the lyrics impromptu to be specific to her. And as I was singing and I'm looking at her casket, uh, it felt like I became a whole new person. And after that is when things just started becoming a lot clearer. So then I started wondering, am I her voice, or am I doing this in honor of her for her voice without knowing it because she didn't really have a voice? And everything just became different for me. I'm speaking up more. I usually tell myself that I'm an introvert. I still think I am. So people think it's odd that I'm doing a podcast, that I'm a speaker, transformational speaker. I usually speak in church in different like small platforms, not so much in the big stages. And everything has shifted. So it's interesting that you asked that because I just realized that recently, like, okay, this was not me. And people who know me in the past, they're like, oh, okay. Yeah, I knew that you were this kind of person, but now this is a whole new you. Like, who are you?
Yeah. What's interesting, and I think you relate to this very much, is, and this is not necessarily on topic, but either which way, is after the passing, it's almost like a piece of them comes home within. I also felt that, and I think that's very, I hear that in the way that you speak about your mom. I'm like, yeah, it's like a piece of her
Mhm.
came back to you.
Yeah.
And it's like you're emanating, you know, perhaps what she wished she could have done for herself, which was speak up. And I do relate to that very much with my mom as well. My mom stayed silent for so many things, so much worse than I kind of teetered back and forth, at least in the household at times. But yeah, my mom stayed silent for everything she endured, and she definitely deserved a whole different life, I felt like,
Yeah.
after dad passed, and it was terribly sad. And I suppose in some ways it could be that, I don't even know, I guess just like speaking up is for her and myself and for
Yeah.
everyone else who has endured any of
Mhm.
these types of things, because
Mhm.
it's really sad to live in a shell of yourself, knowing that there's so much more out there that you can do, that you want to do, that you feel inspired to do.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, at times it does take something dramatic like a passing
Yeah.
or something else, that
Mhm.
kind of inspires us to break down the glass ceiling over our
Yeah.
own lives.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's again with the topic from silence to self-worth. I look back and I thought that she was worth so much more than people saw her as, or even us as her kids. Uh, and without me even saying that, my daughter said something to me shortly after my mom's passing, and she's like, "Uh, Mom, you seem very different since Grandma passed." I'm like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "Yeah, there's something a lot different about you." I was like, "Oh, okay." So, yeah, that's one of my biggest turning points to answer your question. And I am grateful for it. I am really grateful for it because it's I think in some ways it was always within me, but for whatever reason I just never found that voice that was just screaming to get out. So, yeah.
It's very,
Wow.
very relatable. And I think even part of myself is still maneuvering um the I don't want to say audacity, but I kind of want to say audacity to say, well, actually, yes, I do this, and I can speak after all. I
Yeah.
can write a book, and
Yeah.
things. I mean, like I mentioned, this is only my third podcast, so even after these catalytic events that have kind of led to the breaking of illusionment, there's still been steps that I've still been trying to take to kind of
Wow.
muster the will to step forward because there's still
Yeah.
some resistance at times. I get nervous and I'm like, oh, I don't know. What if I just sound strange? Or what if I say something I ought not to? Or what if I give too much information away of things that I'm not even ready to discuss yet? And so but again, going back to the intuition and kind of grounding, and I almost to a degree was like the fact that I have a cold right now is almost in my favor because it's like I'm tired enough to like be calm and not overthink everything. I'm kind of just like, yeah, this is everything happens for a reason. One
Oh,
could
yeah.
look at it and be like, oh, I have a cold, but I'm doing this podcast, like, grr, how come? But I'm like, this works in my favor because it
Yeah.
helps me like be mellow and be in present
Exactly.
in the moment.
Yeah, and I love it, and I can tell that you have a calming spirit about you, and just the way that and I love the fact that this is different. It's one of my very, very unique podcasts, and here's why. Because it's not just me asking questions, and I like that. It's two-way conversations where you're asking me questions, and it to me, it uplifts the podcast uplifts the conversation versus that I'm just asking you these questions, but you're relating and you're asking in return, which I love. It also makes me think, and it's bringing back the good parts and memories, like my parents, my dad, and my mom, the things that matter to me a lot, especially now in my life. Oh, wow. You mentioned faith earlier, so I want to ask you, how did your faith or spiritual truth guide the shift, that turning point that you talked about?
So that one did come after my mom passed away. I was completely alone. My relationship with my siblings just imploded after both of their passing. And I was alone and I was living under the roof, under my parents' roof. But they weren't there anymore. My siblings weren't there anymore. It's this like creaky house that I mean, it was just so it was so eerie in so many ways and also peaceful. It was very confusing. So, as I mentioned before, my household was very chaotic. My dad was a rageaholic. It was every single day at any given point of the day, you didn't know when and how many times there would be a rage implosion, yelling, screaming. You're just hoping that you're not next, kind of thing. And so, for the house to be dead silent was just so weird. And again, going back to like this love hate thing where it's so peaceful, I feel calm here, this is new. And then also, well, at what cost? Both of my parents are deceased, and I'm at the time I was having issues with my siblings. And yeah, so that kind of led me to go to church. I had always felt like something within me that, was aligned to something higher, but I came to find Christ in that way. I was more so really just looking for community. I was like, I need to be around people that are not doing the crazy unhinged things that I used to do when I was trying to survive. So just kind of people who are, have normal habits. And I
Yeah.
ended up there really just seeking community, and I ended up getting baptized. I mean, not even a month later. I remember one morning I was like, Jesus Christ, if you are real, if you are like the dude, like I just want you to make a sign. And it was a Sunday morning, and that evening at church, they literally said something that was like verbatim that I had in my journal that I was like, oh
Wow.
my gosh, this is my sign. And so I got baptized, even though, and my analytical mind when I first walked in, was like, I'm not getting baptized until I read this Bible through and through, and I'm completely aligned with what this is saying, and I know everything, and I understand, this very analytical, logical mindset of mine that was like, this is how I'm going to proceed, and if I choose not to, then it is what it is. And I didn't get through even a fraction of the Bible, but it was the movement within that felt and knew the truth for me. And so that was so beautiful and very unique to the life I had been living, which was always analytical and logical, and in many ways that inspired my ability to seek truth and seek answers, not necessarily from a book or from a website or from my own like analyzing, but simply from within. That actually taught me a lot, from just kind of like feeling.
Yeah.
And again, growing up with a severely chaotic and distressed nervous system, I didn't know what that meant. It was always the
Yeah.
logical mind which kept me alive and kept me out of trouble and kept me out of, situations I didn't want to be in. So to be able to go within was so uh, unique, and I had never kind of lived my life that way for the last 12 years at least. I mean, as a child, we're all born with that ability, but that kind of
Yeah.
gets broken apart and built upon in different ways through our circumstances. So yeah, I mean, I don't know what your faith background is like, and I don't know if you're a part of any church or anything, or you want to share your kind of
Oh,
stories.
yeah, absolutely. I am did I mention that maybe it's my other I was on a podcast before I came on this one. I was the guest actually. Uh, yeah, I am from a different faith background. When I say different, so my dad was a pastor and then he was an ordained bishop before he passed. He was an ordained bishop for many years. My mom was the missionary and the church mother. It's the old, like the old traditional Christian Pentecostal.
Mhm.
That's my background. And earlier this year, I became an ordained pastor myself. So, my faith is very important to me. It's all I've ever known, despite my journey through life, uh, despite my failed marriages and obstacles and different things like that. I've always stayed grounded because of my faith and because I knew what uh, my calling and my purpose was earlier on, but I shunned it and I did different things on my own volition, not spiritually aligned. We talked about alignment. I wasn't aligned this way. I was looking for alignment this way, which doesn't work, right? It has to be with God first. And uh once I came to that realization, I kind of get back into order and alignment. So very, very important to me. I can't live without it. I mean, those days or those times where I felt like I was kind of shifting a little bit of way in the wrong direction, it was literally like fish out of water, like I couldn't breathe. I There were moments, I kid you not, Daisy, there were moments I get up and I felt like I couldn't breathe, like I could no longer live. And
Mhm.
so I had to realign myself to put myself back in order. So
It's
yeah,
beautiful that you had that relationship. You're very blessed in that regard. I mean, so much so, truly. I wish my
thank you.
parents kind of had that for us, but either which way, I'm grateful to have ended up there anyway, because I mean,
Exactly.
to know the Holy Spirit, to know Christ
Mhm.
is like a breath of fresh air.
I
Yeah.
know. It really is, and it's sometimes it's one of those things where I'm like, "Oh, I just want everyone to feel this ease and feel this sense of peace and sense of wholeness." And it's a process. It doesn't happen overnight for new believers or even for believers who have been walking that path for many years. Sometimes people still go through the process where they're still questioning and still challenged in a
Mhm.
way where they're asking, is this really what I'm supposed to do? Does it make sense to continue walking this path and this journey? Uh, but I can tell you that the journey, regardless of what it looks like, it's easier, in my opinion, in my life, it's easier with him than without him.
I'd have to second that
Yeah.
10 times, tenfold.
Yeah.
I have to second that.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of alignment, you help others. You mentioned that you help others blend wellness, mindset, and conscious success. What does leading from wholeness look like in real life for you? Not theory, but You know what I'm talking about? Like the day-to-day choices?
Yeah. It more so looks like being aware of the fact that I have responsibilities and I do have a to-do list and there are things that do need to get done, but coming from a place of, okay, well, what can I do first that I know is going to be aligned with where I am now at this current moment in time? Every day we wake up and we feel different. We're thinking different things, and some days a task might seem easier for a morning or an evening depending on how we're feeling or whatnot. So I
Mhm,
generally try to, unless I have a task specifically that's due that day, I try to go with like what I'm feeling at that moment in time, which is so opposite of what the world is kind of built off of now. It's more so be logical, be focused, be checklist mind oriented, just go, go, go. And
mhm,
I'm still, even at times, still learning how to follow my intuition when it comes to getting things done. And it's not to say that one must avoid getting something done that, oh, it just doesn't feel right.
yeah,
Yeah. But it's more so creating a life that feels right to you, so much so that even getting those things done feels like a pleasure because you know it's a step forward into something greater for yourself, as opposed to like, okay, I'm just checking something off
mhm.
for some company that like I don't even care. I'm so indifferent. Oh, I just got to cross it off, like that kind of thing. It's like, you know what? Perhaps this task is complex and lengthy, and perhaps it isn't my favorite task, but I know in my soul it is taking me a step further into where I want to be. So therefore, I'm more than willing to get it done.
That's it. I like that because it's getting you, more, I guess, more into who you are, which is great. Wow. Thanks for sharing that.
What does that look like for yourself? I feel like I'm just asking back the questions.
Well, no, I love it. I mean, that's a it's a good dialogue, and I like to engage in ways like this, uh, because it helps me to share my version of, this is me becoming as well. I
Mhm.
have not arrived at this. I've been in ministry for decades. I've been in corporate for decades, but I still believe that there's so much more of me in the becoming, is what I like to call it. So this kind of helps me to bring things out and to, talk about things that helps me to put things into perspective clearer, which is great. For me, hmm, leading from wholeness has taken on a whole new perspective for me because I was not always leading from a place of wholeness, even in my day to day choices. So now I am being more intentional in how I speak and how I show up and how I uh, live my life. In every aspect of my life, I'm being more intentional. There were times in my past where I think I was leading from a place of brokenness. Uh, and that led me to believe that that's not who I was. It was just my circumstances, even though I had parts in that process, right? Because I allowed myself, I put myself in that position. No one forced me to that position. I put myself there. And I found myself that that was pieces of me, and those fragmented pieces I did not recognize. And so now, fast forward to now, because I have said yes to being ordained, which I was called several times in the past, and I basically told God, I'm not ready.
Mhm.
I kept with all the excuses. I'm not ready. I'm not ready. I'm not worthy. And he was basically saying, "No, I'm not saying that you have to be ready. You don't have to
That's
have
a
all the
big
pieces
one.
together first, right?"
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
like you're
very
talking
valuable.
about, yeah, when you started, you mentioned about you wanted to read the book first before you gave your life to Christ. And that's not how God works. He's not calling perfect people.
Oh, what was it? He doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called.
It qualifies the call. And because of my past and my failed relationships, I told myself that I wasn't qualified. And I let that past define me. And so in my worship time, in my time where I was strategically seeking God again and his Holy Spirit again, uh, It's when I heard clearly that no, your past does not define you. Those were defining moments for you, but they did not define you and they did not disqualify you. People, the church system is what disqualified you, but he didn't. Because if you look through all the stories in the Bible, he didn't disqualify the people who had all those different issues and went through whatever they went through. If that was the case, we wouldn't be able to relate to any of the stories,
So
right? I
true.
mean, look at Paul. Look at, I mean, I can name them Paul, Peter. Oh my gosh. Jonah, all of those people uh, that said no and went their own way and wanted to do their own thing. David, I mean, but then they came back into alignment because that's what their original call was about.
That's
So
so
for me,
interesting. And I think that's
yeah,
so valuable specifically to, I guess, this last season of my life, but go on.
yeah. So for now, I am leading from a place of wholeness and like you, I help. So now with my transformational speaking, Uh, I do both. I blend corporate and faith, and the subject is really the same. It's about breaking silence and also, working with leaders and different people, whether in organizations or in associations, faith based, to focus on speaking up, right? Transforming them with make sure there's an impact in how they show up to their daily lives and bringing wholeness into the workplace. So when I talk to corporate, it's about yes, you're telling your employees to bring their best selves to work. But what you're essentially saying is, I want you to leave parts of you home and bring just the part that we find comfortable, the part that we find uh that is going to show up and do the work that we want to do. Bring your best selves to work should be bring your whole self to work so that they're not just showing up with parts of their brains or part of their, visions or a part of their whatever it is. Because when you do that, you're performing and you're not really being your true self. I know it's a long winded way to say it, but that's how I feel. And that's how when I share uh, in front of people in terms of, okay, this is who you are as a whole person, they look at me like, what do you mean? That's what I mean. Wow. This is really helping me to to think more in retrospect of what the topic that I feel so passionate about, helping people to blend those the wellness mindset, the conscious thinking, and the consciousness and intentionality of how we lead daily. That's
Yeah,
great.
absolutely. I also think that, kind of last part of what you said, more specifically faith-based, I found it very interesting that, you mentioned like the stories of the people in the Bible who kind of like strayed away and then eventually get brought back to the path. I find so much alignment in that. I kind of like look back to even the last 4 months of my life, and I'm like, wait a minute, what exactly was I burrowing my head in my laptop working towards? And
Mm,
typically, we know that Christ doesn't want something for us when we reach a dead end and there is no exit, there is no way around, there is nothing more there. And sometimes we think that we're taking inspired aligned action, and this goes to say for what I'd been working on the last few months, and coming full circle back to, doing podcast writing and speaking. And it's like everything I'm trying to avoid, everything I'm trying to like, no, 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 I'll deal with that when I accomplish this, when I do this. And I'm like, oh, hold on, miss, because we don't he doesn't qualify, he qualifies the called, he doesn't call the
mm,
qualified.
right.
So this, I think even just that nugget of wisdom is going to sit with me for weeks to come at the very least.
Yeah, I mean, as you're talking about that, I'm thinking about also the man with the lisp.
I don't know that story. I have still haven't read the whole Bible.
And and if you think about it, I want you to go to that story. That I know a lot of stories in the Bible sometimes because I have so much impact in my brain. I can't tell exactly like, go to Numbers 2 verses 5.
Right, right.
Uh my dad could. I guess I need to kind of follow in that footsteps. But it was interesting, with that story. What's interesting more about that story is, uh, he could have been, "Oh, you're stuttering. You're not qualified for this. You can't speak." But God used him. He used him in a tremendous way. And so for you and I, sometimes again, we are the people who are telling ourselves that because we think that we are not there yet. And we get the nudge, like you mentioned, you got the nudge, and I've gotten the nudge several times, and I am disqualifying myself. We're doing the stories out because he's not. And if we're really truly aligned, it's really about what he thinks, not what anyone else thinks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
That's the hard
So,
part at times though, because even still, I have like bits and pieces of that, like, well, perhaps when I achieve this or when I get here and then it'll make sense, and then it'll make sense. Because in so many ways, even now, when you asked me when you brought up earlier, like my info that I had sent you, like the paragraph
mhm,
and whatnot, like helping leaders lead, but I haven't worked with anyone one-on-one directly. It's more so, okay, well, like friends that I've come across here who I've helped in these ways, but it's not like I feel qualified as in, oh, I have had a coaching call and I had performed this and this client, got to here. And so in many ways, like even when you brought that up, my stomach kind of went down. I was like, I don't have any clients yet, but that's not even necessarily something that I'm trying to do. It's just more so like, what are your qualifications in this realm, if not some sort of certification. I'm not certified to be a speaker. I'm not like, I don't have a license. I don't have a degree in this area.
right.
It's more so just something that feels so natural to me. And perhaps that is enough. And perhaps I need to drill that into my mind even still. It's like every single day I have to convince myself that, like, I don't necessarily have to, get to this point. And I see other
Mhm,
people kind of just have like the confidence, essentially is what it is, the confidence
yeah.
to say like, hey, come to me, I can coach you and I can help you get to this, and I have no way to prove that I can because I don't have any past clients. I'm like, how do you
Mhm.
even get that audacity, like, I need whatever that is.
Yeah, and if you think about it though, Daisy, how does anyone start anything? You have to start somewhere. Right?
Hmm.
I mean, the top level, coaches, they had to start somewhere. I guarantee that they didn't just start saying, "Okay, you know what? I have 10 coaches," because you're not gonna get to the top of the ladder just by you saying, "Oh, yeah, I'm up here." How did you get there? You had to have
Exactly.
gone, right, step by step, because I've never seen anyone and on any ladder went from the bottom to the top without making those steps, and it's a process. I've never seen it. If it exists, then maybe I just don't know about it. But you have to, it's a process. Everything is a process and you have to start somewhere. I am now also just recently start opening myself to saying I should get a mentor. I've often heard people talk about mentor. I've had mentors in my past, but not for my new platform, not what I'm doing now. That was more so corporate and faith based. Uh, Mentors are good because they can help you along the way. Or the coaches, get a coach to be a coach. You can also get a coach because they have been through some stuff. They know what the pitfalls are and they can help you. The fact that you feel comfortable in what you're doing and it becomes natural to you, that's part of your calling. And yes, your confidence may be a little bit shaken right now, but I believe that by you making the bold step to do it, eventually, it's gonna become so easy, it's gonna be like second nature, it's like, "Okay, all right, next," and and not only that too, but this podcast is going out, it's gonna be on Spotify, it's gonna be on YouTube, and people are gonna see who Daisy is, and, okay, wow, for whatever reason, maybe I'm speaking this into existence. No, she has something. Sometimes that's how people gets discovered, right? They get discovered by waiting tables. Charlize Theron. Right? Look at her now. People get discovered different ways every day. She had that natural ability. Maybe she was just waiting for that opportunity to come, for the door to be opened. And especially if you're asking for this door to be opened, ask and it shall be given.
And take action when it does, when the opportunity does arise.
Yeah, yes, and seize the moment. And I mean, I believe because if you didn't say this now, I believe that with your disposition and just the way that you are, uh, fueling back the questions to me, I wouldn't know that you were not a coach or you were not someone doing a podcast, hosting your own podcast. I wouldn't have known.
That is so wild. But I suppose that is true. Yeah. I mean, we're only perceived as much as
Yeah.
willing to be seen, I guess. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I mean, of course, I love the authenticity. I love the vulnerability of it. At the same time, I encourage just my daughter. I encourage my uh, faith based people, even those who have led in corporate, the younger woman, and they became like a part of my family because I realized that I was once them, and so I've always encouraged the younger generation to be bold, and it's not about being loud, it's not about the volume or about you being aggressive. It's about you taking a step forward and say, this is me. If I feel the nudge and feel the unction to do it, I am going to take that bold step, and you'll be surprised. You'll be surprised what God does when you say yes, when you are obedient. Because for me, it's my part of my testimony. I wouldn't be here right now if I didn't say yes to God. I would be doing something different.
the
But this is
doors do tend to. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, no, no. I'm just saying this is all because I say yes because I became obedient.
I have noticed that the doors tend to open rather easily whenever you're walking in alignment with God. And I mean, that has become like a tell sign in my life when I know
Mhm.
something is for sure not. And it's not because there are no obstacles when we're working in alignment with God. Excuse me. These cold symptoms are kicking in. Um, It's not because there aren't any challenges whenever we're walking in alignment with Christ, because there always will be challenges, but
Yeah.
it's like there's always still a way. There's always still a way. And I've learned that when you hit that dead end, that like deadbeat dead end, there is nothing else. It's a black hole. That's how I know. I'm like, well, perhaps I was taking action through like a fear mindset or an anxious mindset and trying to pave my own way versus just going down the route that God has already been telling me to go down. But because I don't see the vision, because I don't see how that's gonna, you know, essentially fill the insecurities is what it
Yeah.
ultimately is, right? Running away from things that ultimately I'll find fulfillment in. But this has been a very good conversation. Truly and honestly, community with like-minded individuals is so dire because you're able to even when you already know certain things, just to have it kind of like come back up reassured or
Yeah.
spoken in a different way from a different perspective from a different background
Mhm.
a different journey just adds so much value to the present moment. And I do very much appreciate that this is a two-way combo as well, because I think the previous podcast I did was like only me answering questions, and it's like I'm being grilled like a grilled cheese sandwich.
Oh my gosh, I totally know what you mean. Uh, and I like that too because it's very different. You don't see that quite a bit when you see podcasts. It is usually that one way, and I do mine in terms of guided conversations. Uh, and I'm hoping that the guest would ask questions in return, and it hasn't happened. So kudos to you for doing it because I love the conversation conversational piece. It makes it a lot more easy and
Mhm.
seamless. And I'm learning something about myself more as I'm engaging too. So that's great. I love it.
And it just adds a ton of value to the
Yeah.
listeners as well, because it's like you get two different perspectives and
Yeah.
yeah, very different journeys, but like the same good outcome. That's
Mhm.
ideal. I mean,
Yeah.
it's the walk of testimony, not
Yeah.
necessarily just in terms of faith, but just in terms of life experiences as well.
Oh yeah. I mean, and that's what it is. People always think that testimony is about church, and it's not about that. It's just about you sharing your experience. That's it.
Hmm.
What have you experienced? What have you overcome? What have you gone through? That's all what testimonies. You're attesting to what happened.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Can I ask, and I don't know, oh, how
Mhm.
much time we have? Oh, I don't know if we're over time.
No, we're okay because I scheduled it for an hour and a half, so you're fine.
Okay, that's perfect.
Yeah.
And I ask this more so because I've had tumultuous, in the past relationships in terms of like personal romantic type, and you had mentioned your a couple of experiences with marriage that
Mhm.
perhaps wasn't, I don't know how that looked like if you're wanting to expand on that.
Absolutely. When I think about it, it's not so much it was a journey that I went through, and those journey was not so much about the failure in those marriages. It's more so a journey of rising beyond the ashes. They were literally things that were dead that I had to leave them in the past. And uh, that's one of the things that I appreciate about the book, The Five Undone, Rising Beyond the Ashes, because as I was writing it, there were things that I realized that I have left buried. And uh, one would probably see it as this is about failure, but it really isn't. It's about restoration and redemption, and how God has helped me to rewrite my story and to let me know that I was made for more. It wasn't easy writing it, and I wouldn't have written it uh, because it's so personal. But that was written out of a prophecy for someone from a pastor on the day that I was ordained, a man who I've never met. He doesn't know my story. And after he finished prophesying, I thought it was all said and done. And then later on, he came back before the service was ended and he literally pointed at me and said, God, there's a book in there. And he pointed at my stomach and my chest. And he talked about books and books and books and books. I'm like, I have mentioned it to no one. There's no way he could have known. I've never written it down. I've never whispered it to a friend or colleague or even a family member. So no one knew. So that was God telling me that it was time to start putting the pen to paper. Uh, and in that doing, I still hesitated because it was so personal. Again, because you have five failed marriage, a handful, Daisy, a handful, right? This part it's seeing as me raising my hand is funny. It's a handful of marriages. And I thought at one point, why what do I have with all of this? And being in ministry, how dare me coming to tell other people about uh, Christianity and about life and about overcoming. And to that I say, because God told me to do it.
Mhm.
And he reminded me that the fact that he brought me through all of those, he brought me through all of those for a reason. It wasn't just for me. But now I can share the obstacles. I can share that right there's a pitfall and I want you to avoid it. I don't want you to have to fall in the same pit that I have fallen. And it's the same thing where if you don't have a limp and it's a whatever, walking with a limp, you can't tell someone how to walk with a limp if you haven't walked through it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So, it's for me, it's yes, part of my past was the embarrassment and the shame of all of it because I lived through that for a long time and I didn't want to write this book and put it out. In fact, when I wrote it, I'm like, maybe I should just keep it to myself. But again, the voice clearly says, no, this is not just for you. And the prophecy came that it's to help others to heal. And it was after it was all said and done, when it was just flowing, 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 as I am writing and as I was typing, I realized, okay, this is what he meant by, others can see this and healing. Because if I was reading this book for the first time, I felt like I would regain hope. If I lost hope, I would have regained hope through this book and it would help me to heal. So in relationships, a lot of times people are afraid and I was very vulnerable. This book is very raw, by the way. And when I say raw, it's because that's me being authentic. Uh and part of the first, I forgot what chapters it is. Part of that is me being vulnerable and open and truthful to say that yes, my very first marriage, I was very young. It's not like I was completely in love or anything, but it was because of church pressure, culture pressure, right? You were seeing that if you're in ministry or if you were I was leading the youth department in a church service. Our church entity is what I called it back then. And you couldn't be seen having a boyfriend or dating someone and not get married. That was the very next step. And so I thought the right thing to do was to do that. So I convinced my dad that it's better to be married than to burn. And even though him being a minister, it's like, no, you're taking this out of context. And I argued, not argued, but I, bantered with him. No, 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 no. The Bible said, da, da, da." And so I said, okay, that's what you want to do. Okay, go ahead and do it. I didn't listen. I went ahead and got married. That didn't last very long at all. Uh, and I learned a lesson that I didn't seek him about it. I was not in alignment about it at all. But I also told myself when the relationship that I was in crossed the line of sleeping with someone without being married, I felt like, oh, you know what? I've gone and done that. It's better to be married than to burn. I took that text out of context.
Mhm.
And so we find ourselves in those moments where we think we're doing good and we don't consult the Holy Spirit to do things before we do it. And so I've done that 5 times. So maybe I was a little bit slow because it took me 5 times to realize that I needed to 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 make sure that I was in total alignment with God first, because those things that I've gone through. And the interesting thing to Daisy is he allowed me to go through it.
Mhm. We have to learn our
He,
lessons somehow.
he allowed me to go through all of that. And now coming through all of that, now that I'm on this side of it, I realize that the things that I've gone through, I wouldn't have been where I am today if I didn't go through those things.
You wouldn't have the wisdom, the right words to say that are in alignment with those who require your wisdom, your specific wisdom. Yeah,
Exactly.
absolutely. Our experiences shape not only our path, but also the path for others. I
Exactly.
relate to that in very different, very oppositely, again, like very different backgrounds, but consulting with the Holy Spirit. I haven't had a relationship that lasted me over 3 months, and not I haven't had many of those, like maybe two, maybe three, if I think about it hard. And I'm 28 years old, so sometimes it's like, well, why am I still single? But I also did have a very chaotic background. I did have a 7 year situationship, which was,
Mhm.
just, but I would pray to God, and this is at a time when I didn't even believe in God necessarily. I was just
Right.
like, if he's not meant to be in my life, make him go away. And then something would happen that it's like a very clear him being, excluded from my life, and I'm like, no. So I totally ignored God when I prayed, for clarity on that, and it just put me in a 7 year situationship with which who wants to be in that? Not I.
Yeah.
And it took
Yeah.
me those 7 years to learn that lesson of like, okay, God literally made it clear to you, but you still chose to go back, and I don't
Mhm.
know why. So it's a very different background, a very different circumstance, but the same truth of like, the
Yeah.
Holy Spirit will let you know and will be clear if you're ever so willing to seek Him out. And also be truthful and honest with yourself about what the Holy Spirit is saying. Because sometimes we choose
Mhm.
to misinterpret deliberately, or take out of context because we think it goes in our favor, or because we think it goes
Mhm.
in favor of what we want. But
Right.
what we want is rarely what we need.
Exactly. Exactly. And and I also have this in the book where in one of the longest stint in my marriages, I was midway through it and I realized that it wasn't working. It wasn't going to work. And I thought that, oh my God, here I go again. It wasn't what I was expecting. And I sought God about it. And I heard him clearly. I questioned myself even before I started praying, you know, I got myself in this. I don't know if God is going to even respond at this time. But I prayed anyway. Once I started praying, it just started, coming out, and I was crying out to God, and I heard clearly the timeline that he gave me for that particular marriage. And I questioned what that timeline meant. And it was only until after everything unraveled, then that spirit, the same voice that I heard came back to me, reminded me, "Do you remember what I told you? Now this, see?" And he came through for me. So even in that mess, even though I went ahead and did what I did, God still showed up. He still answered my prayer. He still spoke to me in a very, very audible way that this is, well, to me, I call it audible because I could hear, like, the sentences, the phrases, like this voice, even though people say he doesn't speak in audible way, but I heard it like someone was speaking to me. So that's how I phrase it.
So cool because I have a
Yeah.
friend who receives God's word the same way. I'm more like visionary. I see things. Obviously not like I see things, but like I see
Yeah.
things.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I don't
Yeah.
have the audio
Audio.
version.
Yeah, and I mean, I have both. There are times when I'll see things and he shows me things before it happens and it freaks me out. And then I question like, what does this mean? And then when it happens, like, oh, okay, now I get it.
Mhm.
So I see both the vision. I'm like the vision and the audible part of it. But to me, that's how God works. He works in a way that we don't understand it, and he does different things to different people all the time. And for me, I trust him in every way, even though that didn't look right. It didn't look good in the sight of other people. They'll still speak because in the book I was like, okay, I know that I may get criticized for the fact that you should have known better. You grew up in church. You were raised in church. Your dad was a bishop. How could you? I'm still gonna get that, but it's okay because God is not judging,
Mhm.
and it's all for Him anyway.
Yeah, and especially if it's the path that God laid out for you and for you
Exactly.
following his word. I mean, the whole receiving criticism for things, I mean, if I'm considering the people who I once surrounded myself by and I thought, what would they think? I would never move forth in anything in life because I would just stay stuck.
Yeah.
So there's perhaps there's relevance in that, perhaps not, but I'm indifferent. I'm like, be indifferent. I just continue to move
Exactly.
forward.
Exactly. Be yourself, and as long as you're pleasing Him, that's all I ask is for me to continue to please Him and to show up for Him and to be present for Him, not even for myself, not even for my kids, more so for Him. As long as I'm pleasing Him, then I'm okay with that.
Mhm.
So,
He'll gift you
yeah,
everything required for you
yeah,
and those around
absolutely,
you. And that's
yeah,
the beauty of that. That's the beauty of that trust of like, I give everything to you and you are
hmm
provided for
hmm
completely and wholly.
yeah, absolutely. Wow, this has been a very meaningful conversation. Thank you so much for today, for the two-way conversation, for showing up and being present. And I appreciate you because I know that you are not 100% in your health right now, but you showed up and you were present the entire way. So I so much appreciate you for that, Daisy. Before we wrap up, though, before I give the closing remarks, do you have anything that you want to share with the audience? Do you have a product, a book, or anything you want to share before we wrap up?
I have been working on launching a blog. I'm really not good at website development, so it's taken me a while. And it's also, overcoming this like, well, who's going to read this? But it'll be on daisykatherine.com.
Okay.
Launch date TBD, depending on when I can compute myself to figure out this website stuff. I'm not a tech person, so I'm learning something new, but I'm excited for it. It'll be something very, very new for me and very raw in many ways that I've just never been in before. So
Okay.
this will be good if you want to find me on there. DaisyKatherine.com. That's Catherine with a K.
Awesome. Thank you. And I'll be sure to check that out myself. Wow. Well, to everyone who may be listening or watching, Daisy said something that's going to stay with me for a long time. In that it was true loyalty begins when we seek inward. Here's the truth. Many of us were taught to prove our loyalty through sacrifice, and I've made many sacrifices in my time. We stayed longer than we should have in circumstances and situations, whether work or at home. We worked harder than was healthy for us. We kept quiet when our souls were screaming. But at some point, that kind of loyalty stops being love and starts becoming a loss, the loss of ourselves. You know what? If you've been calling exhaustion commitment or silence strength, I want you to pause and ask yourself, what would loyalty really look like if you included you too? Because that's where self worth is born, I think. You know, when I think about the whole topic and the theme that we're talking about and self worth, this to me is where boldness begins. It's that what the boldness effect is all about. Remembering that silence is expensive, especially when it costs you your truth. If Daisy's story spoke to you today, share this episode with someone who's learning to set boundaries, to find their voice, to lead from a place of wholeness. And before you go, take a moment to name one thing that you're grateful for, because, of course, this is Thanksgiving month. So I want to insert a moment of gratitude in every episode this month. And even if it's a simple courage, the courage to begin again, the courage to take one step, take that bold step. And so as we move through this month of gratitude, I invite you to also pre-order my upcoming book. It's going to be released on December 30th. It's now available for pre-order on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. And it's called Five Undone: Rising Beyond the Ashes. It's a story about love, loss, and the courage to rise again. It's a reminder that even when everything falls apart, you can still rebuild from truth and not from fear. So until next time, protect your peace, honor your worth, practice gratitude daily, and lead boldly without apology. Daisy, thank you again for being a part of Unrestrained Boldness.
Thanks for having me, Jill.
Bye.